From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's Just the Tipsters with Melissa Morgan.
Greetings.
If you got a tip for Melissa, something nagging at your conscience, a flash of memory that might lead to a lead, the actual difference between a ding-dong and a ho-ho, tell us about it by calling the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837, or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. You just might hear your tip on the podcast. And now here's your host. If murder is afoot, she'll fit it in a cast with a tracking device, Melissa Morgan.
More of the cowbell. You nut job, talking about the dismemberment of limbs.
I wasn't. I was just saying. I was analogizing.
I need a cough button.
Oh, okay.
Like professionals have. It's been it was a beautiful analogy. It's been just the worst allergy season for me. I
me too.
When recording this, I cry a lot, but I try to make it through, several episodes without crying, and then screwed again, I start crying. And I used to beg producer Mark to edit my sobbing out, and now he won't because he says it's authentic, and I'm like, yeah, fuck you, nobody wants to hear crying. But it sounds like I'm crying all the time, and I'm not. I have not started this episode crying. I just have really bad allergies, and everyone around does, including producer Mark and even Belladonna Humphreys, our noble and loyal German Shepherd mix rescue crazy bitch face, whose nose runs.
That's true.
Her little nose is more than wet.
I'm holding in my hand right now a Claritin D 24-hour that I'm going to chug.
Bragger.
I'm going to chug it down with some hint water in any moment now.
I applaud that decision because if I didn't have the Claritin D, and just to be clear, I am on a hardcore asthma med I take every night, which I don't have asthma, but my allergies are so bad, and I take Claritin D in the morning, or I could not breathe. Occasionally, I use Afrin nose spray because there's the whole not breathing thing again. I use a neti pot. I use nasal wash spray. I use a nasal gel that was recommended by Tipster Jamie. But I'm a snotty-headed mess. That's all I'm going to say. And as far as producer Mark daring to say people wouldn't understand the difference between a ho-ho and a ding-dong, I mean, really? Really?
I mean, once you get it in your mouth, once you start.
You didn't say that.
I'm just saying they're the same thing.
I gotcha. Well, so is Mexican food. I mean, what's a tortilla? What's a tostada? Well, it's a shell with meat and vegetables and cheese.
I understand.
What's a taco? Oh, it's a shell with meat and vegetables and cheese. So yeah, I mean, you can say that ho-hos and ding-dongs are the same, but they are not. One is circular shape and one is phallic shape.
Tubular. I have always preferred the ding dong because it looks
I've heard that about you.
Okay, it looks like a hockey puck, and I can pretend I'm eating a delicious.
No, that's a ho-ho.
No, ding dongs are the ho-hos are the ones that are tubular, that have the...
oh, no, I've got them confused.
Yeah, that have the
little... Oh, so you like the hockey pucks. Oh, I feel much better. Because if you liked the chocolate dick thing, I was not going to be happy about...
I would not have even thought of that until you brought it up.
Why would the tubular one not be called a ding-dong?
I'm staying out of that discussion.
First of all, you brought it up. You started the whole fucking thing, and then you back away. So a ho-ho is a hockey puck, and a ding-dong is no. A ding-dong is a hockey puck, and a ho-ho is a dick.
It's a
chocolate dick.
Tubular cake.
I think that's a great stripper name, tubular cake.
With a spiral cream filling.
There you go. You have just dug yourself in much deeper. So if we're not going to discuss cake items, which hopefully we're not, this episode is going to be a two-parter because it's so rich in detail. I just don't know that I can make my way through it in one episode. And it's also connected to what will be another episode through a connection with a potential suspect. So it's there's so much going on. So much going on. And we are hopefully going to get to talk to someone who participated in a television show that covered this case specifically on 48 Hours with Erin Moriarty. And we're trying to set up a time, and it's just, he's on the East Coast, we're on the West Coast, he's busy, and we're trying really desperately to get that organized. Hopefully we can, but the story is fascinating no matter what. It's so layered. And I mean, I absolutely feel like Bill Hader on Saturday Night Live. Like, this case has sleepovers and murders and gang members and escape from prison and San Diego and Santa Barbara and Jerry Brown and
it's got Jerry Brown
and Kim Kardashian and Arnold Schwarzenegger denying clemency twice. It's got everything. It's really, and the more it's what's so overwhelming and why we need to do it in a few episodes is that once you start digging and researching, it's like, and here's, what is that? Is that another layer? I'm peeling back yet. Is that another layer? And it isn't just the things that are reported in the news about the case and about the trial and about, the decisions from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and the number of people that are championing this person. It's the pop culture that it's always fascinating to me why one case catches the public's eye or ear or consciousness more than another. And this one does have layers of perhaps racism and planting of evidence. I mean, it's got a lot of everything. It's got everything in it. And while I had heard of the case off and on over the years, because it's been a long time coming, since 1983, the thing that struck me the most was a New York Times article by, what is his name?
Nicholas Kristof.
Nicholas Kristof. Thank you, producer Mark. His article was reprinted in the LA Times Sunday magazine last May of 2018. And it's heavy with detail. And let's be honest, it's heavy with opinion. But Nicholas Kristof, who is a really interesting writer for the New York Times.
He's an op-ed writer. He writes mostly about politics.
That's why I was so fascinated. This isn't his normal bailiwick, and it's very detail oriented, and his opinion is absolutely inserted in there, and lots of people that are popular and famous, as if that matters, have taken up the mantle to try and get this man exonerated, if not exonerated, at least reevaluation of testing, and that actually has happened. So this episode's gonna be about what happened, about the murders, and about up into the trial. And then the second episode is gonna be all of the rest, the conspiracies, the ineptitudes, the admittings, the denials, all of it. It's very layered. So Kevin Cooper was actually not born Kevin Cooper. He was born Richard Goodman. And you'll find out later he has a penchant for name changes. He just changes his name. But he's now going by Kevin Cooper. He's in his early 60s, and he's in San Quentin. So he was born in 1958 near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And he was born Richard Goodman. And when he was 2 months old, his mother placed him in an orphanage. And at the age of 6 months, he was adopted by Melvin and Esther Cooper, who renamed him Kevin Cooper. So when he was a kid, he was, and this is no excuse for future behaviors, but he was subjected to, apparently physical abuse, and he ran away from home numerous times. As an adolescent, he was sent to juvenile courts numerous times. So he had a shitty childhood, and he was a repeat offender, like a lot of people with shitty childhoods who are looking for something to fill a hole that they can't fill with familial love or support or appreciation. So he was a well-known burglar in the Pittsburgh area, and I don't even know how to classify this because it's so odd. He's an opportunistic rapist. I don't know any other way to say it. I mean, I guess a lot of rapists rape on opportunity, but he's a little more unusual than most in that he was in the middle of a burglary and a young girl interrupted him, and he chose to stop the burglary, kidnap her, and take her to a park where he held a screwdriver to her neck and raped her. So he's...
Okay, that is different.
Yeah, I've never... He was, a skilled burglar. That was what he was, what his gift was and, what he was going to do with his fucked up life. And he's intelligent and handsome and messed up. Really, really messed up. So Kevin has this extensive criminal background. He was sentenced to a 1 to 2 year prison term in 1977 for burglarizing a home in Pittsburgh. He stipulates in court to kidnapping and raping a minor female who interrupted him during a burglary in Pennsylvania. So over the next 5 years, he was convicted and sentenced to jail twice for burglaries and released on probation in 1982. And in late 1982, he fled to California after he escaped a Pennsylvania psychiatric facility. Now, how one in the early 80s gets committed to a psychiatric facility after a long criminal history, I don't know. But he was, committed to a psychiatric facility and he escaped, which he is also apparently good at. But again, not like a mastermind. Just, I don't know how he escaped from the psychiatric facility, but I can tell you how he escaped from the Chino men's prison, because that was, again...
That seems like it would be a little bit more difficult.
One would think, but he's opportunistic. I don't know how else to say it. So he makes his way to California after he escapes from the mental institution. And quickly, so he's not, again, a mastermind. He's quickly convicted of 2 burglaries in the LA area in 1983. So he begins serving a 4-year prison sentence under his new name, David Troutman.
Wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
His prior convictions, the ones that he fled when he left the psychiatric thing,
mm-hmm.
was that under a different name?
Kevin Cooper.
That was under Kevin Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, was that and that's not his birth name?
No, his birth name's Richard Goodman.
Right, so he changed it to Kevin Cooper,
mm-hmm.
had problems in Pennsylvania,
yeah.
Went to California, escaped from
mm-hmm.
the psychiatric hospital, moved to California, changed his name. So did the police in California know that he was Kevin Cooper of Pennsylvania?
Well, in the early 80s, I think I just have like a fuzzy memory. I know that even to 2019, there are police agencies who do not communicate with other police agencies across a state line, across a county line. I'm hoping those lines become very, very blurred in the future, if not now. But maybe back then, interstate, communication between police agencies or between a police agency and a psychiatric facility, even though you were put there by a police agency. I don't understand how it worked, but so he gets arrested and he's, given a 4-year sentence as David Troutman.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm, at the California Institute for Men, the CIM. It's in Chino, California. So he's remanded to the minimum security section, even though he has escaped a psychiatric prison, a psychiatric facility.
Except they didn't know that, probably.
Well, maybe you're right. Maybe, so he's assigned to a minimum security section on April 29th of 1983. So on June 2nd of 1983, Mastermind Kevin Cooper / Richard Goodman / David Troutman climbs through a hole in the prison fence and walks away from the prison through an open field.
Okay.
Climb through a hole in the prison fence.
It's just amazing that there was a hole in the prison fence.
There's that.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying I just, the only word I can use to describe him pre-trial is opportunistic.
Yeah, so he's walking through the yard. It's like, okay, I'm thinking about what I'm having for dinner tonight. I think they're going to serve the mashed potatoes. And, oh, look, there's a hole.
Yeah, look.
I'll just climb through it.
I can't have one more day of shit on a shingle.
Right, exactly.
I'm Audi 5000. There's a hole. I'm out. So he found his way to a beautiful home that was empty for the time being on English Drive in Chino, a beautiful area. It wasn't that built up back then. It's almost like a master plan community. Chino is one of those areas, and I know producer Mark lived not far from there in Hacienda Heights.
Yeah, I lived in the San Gabriel Valley.
Yeah.
Chino Hills is a little east of there.
Okay. So there's an empty, large 4,000 square foot house, and he holds up there for a few days. He admittedly held up there for a few days. He made calls to two different women, hoping that they would help to fund his escape. And, was like, come on, I really, he made repeated calls to these two females in particular. Saying,
From the house?
From that house.
I think it's important to point out to our younger listeners that back in 1983, they could not do what they do now and just look at the caller ID and then instantly trace where the phone call came from.
Right.
You could be anonymous and just call from a landline. And
right. Right. I thought you were going to go the direction of explain to our younger listeners there were hardwired phones.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's that, too. But yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So he used the hardwired phone at the Lease house. The last name of the owners was Lease, and on English Drive. And it's, this beautiful house. And he ate their food, stayed around. But he said that as soon as it got dark on June 4th, so he was there for 2 days, totally admitted he was there for 2 days. On June 4th, as soon as it got dark, he hitchhiked to Mexico. He admitted stealing a purse. He hitchhiked to Mexico. And that's the evening of June 4th. And we know that on June 5th, he had checked into a hotel in Tijuana, which is about 130 miles south of Chino Hills. Now, what we're talking about is probably 16 hours, maybe. No, maybe more than that, 18 hours. So in June, the sun goes down on the West Coast around 8:30 or 9. So let's say he leaves at 8 and he checks in at 8 p.m. and he checks in at 4 p.m. the following day. So what is that? 12 and 8. That's
way more time than it takes to get to Tijuana.
Right. So, okay, 24 and 8, 32 hours. So, yeah. So it took him, but he hitchhiked and stole a purse in the meantime. So when he gets there, he befriends an American couple. When he gets to Tijuana and checks into the hotel, he befriends an American couple who owned a sailboat. He hitchhiked a ride on the boat with them, and he worked as a crew member. And they cruised around for almost 2 months, about 6 or 7 weeks, cruising around Baja and Southern California. So 7 weeks later, he ends up docked in Santa Barbara. And it's here where his luck runs out as far as opportunities. He is accused of raping a woman on a boat dock near where he had been hitching a ride with this couple. And the victim goes to the sheriff's office to report the crime, the rape victim, and she sees a wanted poster with Kevin Cooper's photograph. And she goes, "This is the guy. This is the guy who raped me." Now, his wanted poster is for a crime that was committed 150 steps from the house he was staying at in Chino Hills back in June. Overnight, June 4th, June 5th. So he said he left the evening of June 4th after dark. Now that night at the Ryan home, big, beautiful home, horse property at the top of a pretty big hill, pretty big mesa. The Ryan family, the mom, the dad, the son, the daughter, and the son's best friend was staying over. So there's Doug and Peggy Ryan, their 10-year-old daughter Jessica, their 8-year-old son Josh, and Josh's best friend Christopher Hughes are all in the home overnight. And on the morning of June 5th, Bill Hughes shows up at the house to pick up his son, Christopher Hughes, from the sleepover. So what he finds inside is a nightmare. Everyone's idea of a nightmare. He finds Doug and Peggy Ryan and their 10-year-old daughter just, there's no other word, slaughtered. They've been stabbed with a hatchet, a knife, an ice pick, and the only one still alive is 8-year-old Josh. His throat's been cut. He can't talk. They airlift him to the hospital. He is a mess for quite a while, but he appears, a couple of weeks later on a video. And there is a child psychologist speaking to him and asking him, "Do you remember what happened?" And he's beautiful. Josh Ryan is a beautiful boy. He's probably in his 30s now. I don't know, but all he had left was his grandmother, and his grandmother has passed. But boy, she was a strong advocate for her daughter, her son-in-law, her granddaughter, and her grandson who is still alive. And he's a sweet, beautiful man. And he was a sweet, beautiful boy. And he says it was 3 or 4 white guys. And other things. He also describes one of the men as having sticky hair, which is what his mom Peggy had, kind of a curly fro. And he describes one of the offenders as having a curly fro. And what's just one piece of interesting details about this is that at the time, Kevin Cooper's hair was braided in cornrows. So there was nothing that would be Afro-ish like about his hair at the time. So it's when you're an 8-year-old boy and you've been through something so traumatic and your family's been slaughtered, and the first thing you say when you gain consciousness and you almost die, stabbed straight through to your ribs, broken some ribs with a knife, that much force used to stab you, through your neck, through the back of your head, and you live, but you are changed forever, and you're 8. And you've seen taped interviews with 8-year-olds, some younger children, some older children, who are clear as a bell and who can tell you the guy had on green and he looked like the guy across the street. And then there are those who say, "My daddy did it," and their daddy wasn't home. It's so difficult with kids. They hypnotized him. He was open to doing anything they needed to solve this case. And I feel so bad for Josh Ryan because he obviously is completely convinced that Kevin Cooper is the man who killed his family and almost killed him. But there's just so many questions. There's, honest to God, way more questions than answers when it comes to this case.
Did he so he changed his story from a bunch of white men to Kevin Cooper?
Well, yes and no. I'm not. Josh is smartly not answering specific questions, and that is his right. He was interviewed several times by Erin Moriarty, who, by the way, received letters from Kevin Cooper from prison saying, I'm an innocent man and I'd like you to look at this case. And it's taken her a long time, but she's done it several times. She has interviewed Kevin Cooper several times. She has interviewed Josh Ryan. She has interviewed several of the participants from law enforcement, several of which have taken their mics off and walked out of the room. And not when she was being confrontational, but when she asked them a question they couldn't answer. And I think they felt they were going to be thought of as stupid or, not knowing the case. She hadn't accused him of anything. And, it was basically like, is this the way your sheriff's department ran? Something like there were 70 people listed that went through the crime scene?
Right. The crime scene was,
so compromised.
Right.
So compromised. So when Josh Ryan's 8 and let's think about this. You're 8, you're asleep. You are asleep. Who amongst us could be woken up? I mean, that is, my nightmare is a home invasion. So who can be woken up and your eyes adjust completely? There wasn't light on. He saw a shadow in his room. He saw one shadow. There was one person who heard him, but he somehow feels there were others in the house. Maybe he heard things happening at the same time. I don't know. I think his poor subconscious has been picked over so many times that I don't know if we'll ever know what happened unless someone admits it. And I'll be honest, the other people that are real strong suspects are not going to admit it. That's another problem with the case being, 36 years old. Several people have passed away. Several people that were too young to have already left us that had information. Some people definitely reached, a very high age. Those in law enforcement who were already way into their middle age when this happened. It's just it's such a layered thing and so hard to put together. But there are so many great resources if you want to read about this case from a group of 11 students of Northwestern University Law School who interviewed 36 people over a 2-month period, went over 2,600 pages of evidence to come up with questions to help with an appeal for Kevin Cooper. It's very, very layered. So yes, poor Josh, that was a long answer to your question, producer Mark. Poor Josh Ryan's statement. And even he, before he got so upset with people wanting to help Kevin Cooper get out, even he said, the police took my statement and transformed it from 3 or 4 white guys to 3 or 4 Hispanic or African guys to 1 African-American male.
Okay, I see.
And now he has not recanted that statement, but he no longer says that statement. He is just firmly committed that
he's now convinced
that Kevin
it's Cooper.
Yeah. Even his grandmother, who was firmly convinced that Kevin Cooper was it toward the end of her life, when more and more pieces of information kept coming out, even she changed. I wouldn't say changed her mind 180, but I'm going to guess she went about 45 degrees. She had doubts. She had doubts, and not doubting her grandson at all, but doubting so much has happened in this case that is inconceivable. I'm just going to have to say that. So many police agencies, so much. It was a real bad perfect storm. So I'm shocked and saddened, but even in 1983, 6 weeks after, for some reason, they quickly figured out it was Kevin Cooper was the main suspect. I believe it was from fingerprints in the house that he was squatting in. I believe they found fingerprints in the house he was squatting in, thought, okay, he escaped from the California Institute for Men in Chino. He spent, a day or two here squatting in this house. He killed these people, and then he fled. And their entire motive was money. Now, this will be brought up in episode 2, but there was money all over the house. There was cash and a money clip sitting out on the kitchen counter. There was jewelry, expensive watches. There was Mrs. Ryan's purse on the kitchen counter. There was opportunity everywhere for someone who was a burglar to make money.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
If he's an experienced burglar, he's going to not. Right. He's not going to take all that money and all those valuables.
But slaughter an entire family
for
what?
They said it was money. Police said it was money.
Right.
Okay.
But there are many wonderful pictures from the LA Times, from the New York Times, from the Northwestern law students, crime scene photos of, all of the stuff around the house that would be easy to lift if you were in a money search. It's mind-boggling that all of this stuff, it almost looks staged. That someone
it might have been.
Well, that's interesting. But I think the money clip was Mr. Ryan's, was Doug Ryan's, and the purse was obviously Peggy Ryan's. But it's just very odd. So here's this experienced burglar who's in, the California Institute for Men in the minimum security section because he's a burglar, and they may not know that he's Kevin Cooper from Pittsburgh and a rapist, but they know he's definitely David Troutman, who is a burglar in Southern California.
Right.
So he's there for burglary, and he doesn't do what he's great at. He doesn't take anything.
Right. And even if they'd known he was a rapist, none of the victims here were raped.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, no one was raped. Thank you for bringing up that point. So, but again, I don't know that he's here's what's so baffling. It's difficult to defend a person who's not a good person. Now, he, of course, as a lot of people do when they make it to prison, they become, soldiers of God, and I've changed my ways. Now, he absolutely says he's changed his ways. He has, done a lot to put pluses in that column. He does a lot of speaking, even just from the telephone from the prison. He works on a blog. He tries to fight for justice for other inmates. Yeah, okay. But I never saw him as, a rapist. Typically, they have a plan and a victim. Sometimes, again, opportunity. They would just find someone, an easy person that they feel like they could dominate, and there's that. But his spaces between his rapes it's not like he was compelled to be a rapist. So that's why I call him opportunistic. I just don't know. I can't classify him in any other way before this trial for the murders as opportunistic. So you're absolutely right, Producer Mark. There were no rapes in the Ryan household. Neither Jessica, who was 10, or Mrs. Ryan, who was like 43, neither of them were raped. The boys, the husband, nothing. No, there was no rape, and there was no burglary. So it feels more like a targeted assassination.
Assassination hit, or just something a serial killer would do. Or the other thing I'm thinking of, and I don't know if you're going to hit on this or not, but there were 5 people attacked, right? How was one guy do all that? Because it's all stabbing. It's not shooting people.
Exactly. You're not incapacitating people quickly.
It seems like even the kids should have been able to run out, or at least one or two of them. Anyway.
You're exactly right. No, it's a big house, and Mr. and Mrs. Ryan were in the same room. Jessica had her own room. It could have been that Christopher Hughes even had his own room. Usually if you stayed over at someone's house when I was a kid, you slept in the homeowner's child's room. But, this house was very big. It was very big and very beautiful. And maybe Christopher had his own room. And if you can isolate your victims, it still would be extraordinarily difficult and a stabbing is so awful and personal typically, but we'll hear a potential theory as to who could have done this and why. And it doesn't have anything to do with robbing or raping or a small burglary. It has to do with revenge. So for a deal gone bad. So there's, and that again, really layered. That's going to be for episode 2. So Kevin Cooper / David Troutman is arrested in Santa Barbara on July 30th. And he is brought back to Chino Hills, and of his own asking, the court moves his case from Southern California to San Diego County. Because embarrassingly, even in 1983, the racism was awful. Now, if they identified him within 5 days as the person who was squatting in the house, and they, the young girl in Santa Barbara who accused him of rape, recognized his wanted poster from the sheriff's department as a man, who's a suspect in 4 murders and 1 attempted murder, because Josh Ryan has survived. They had 6 or 7 weeks to come up with awful things. So when he is transferred back to Chino Hills, there are protesters with signs that say "Hang the N-word" and stuffed simian animals attached to their signs and boards.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, 1983. That's
amazing.
Yeah.
And horrible.
It is horrible. And one of the things I love about our justice system is that you're innocent until proven guilty. It doesn't always work out that way, and sometimes you're proven guilty when you're innocent. But the fact that before the trial has started, the racism is overwhelming. I'm just stunned. In 1983 in Southern California, it was still that bad. And I guess I shouldn't be stunned, but I am. So it's moved to San Diego. It's a really interesting trial. By this time, he now has an afro. He has grown the afro that Josh Ryan said that he saw. But the pictures that are shown when he's arrested show him with his cornrows. I don't know, well, I shouldn't say I don't know if jurors, because I do know that after the trial, a juror has come out and said, "I really regret my decision." And we'll get into that in episode 2. So he's convicted of the 4 murders and 1 attempted murder. After having it, moved from San Bernardino to San Diego County. He did plead guilty to the escape from the prison. And he pled guilty to the attempted rape of the person. Or no, he did not. I apologize. He did not plead guilty to that rape. He pled guilty to a rape back in 1982. So a different rape. Yeah, sorry. See, so he's not a great guy. So it's hard to defend him.
That's what makes this kind of a case so hard.
It's so difficult because he isn't a great guy. His career is as a burglar and a opportunistic rapist. But it doesn't necessarily make him a murderer. And I don't know that you progress from raping young girls to slaughtering a family for no benefit to you other than killing. And like producer Mark said, a serial killer, which I will be honest, this was so messy and awful. And it's not like serial killers are, balletic in their performance. They make mistakes too. It was so sloppy and messy and just felt like murder for for revenge or for a reason. It just doesn't feel like a serial killer wants to slaughter a family and leaves one boy alive. It just doesn't. It doesn't feel like that. But, who am I? I'm not a judge or a prosecutor or anything. It's just an opinion. So he testified in his own defense, and he, totally admitted he escaped from the men's prison in Chino, that he slept in the Lease house, and he just denies every single thing about the Ryan house. Just like I wasn't there. I left after dark before this happened. I stole a purse. I left on foot. I ended up hitchhiking. I got to Tijuana. I checked into my hotel. Even his defense pointed out the consistencies in Josh Ryan's testimony and, tried to present evidence that, other people could have been involved, not Kevin Cooper. And they had expert witnesses that criticized the forensic investigation. And that's what we'll definitely get into in episode 2, because it was so badly done. So badly done. So he is convicted on 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder with the intentional infliction of great bodily harm, and he's given the death penalty. And there's a stipulation added on to his conviction that says during the penalty phase that he was the man who abducted a female minor in 1982 from a residence, kidnapped her, and later raped her in a park. That seems to be an MO. He'll take a woman from somewhere, take her to a park, rape her, and let her go. So he did that in 82 in Southern California, but he still denies the attempted rape of the woman in Santa Barbara. But so he admits to some things and not to others, which is also interesting and odd. Why would you, well, I raped this one, but I didn't rape that one. I don't understand, but I don't understand a lot about this case. But he is convicted and given the death penalty. And we'll find out in episode 2 that he comes within 8 hours of being executed. And if it were not for a whole lot of last minute juggling, he would already be gone. And we'll find out all of the more bizarre details after this trial in episode 2. And more cowbell.
And remember to go on and subscribe to this podcast. We want to hear from you. Make sure to rate. Give us 5 stars. We really would appreciate it. And review. We really would appreciate that too. And remember, if you got a tip from Melissa, give her a call at 832-847-7837 or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com.